Well, the Frogs found a way. They come back, they survive, they win 35-34 at home against Texas Tech to move to 5-3 on the season. We'll talk about it more next here on Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day.
You are Locked On Horned Frogs, your daily podcast on the TCU Horned Frogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
That's right, Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day, doing a live post-game show. I apologize for the lateness of this. Usually I like to do these right after the ball game, but I was traveling today, taking a family trip, so had the kiddos loaded up, wasn't able to broadcast right after the game, but wanted to talk about this one for sure because TCU comes up with a big victory. They're now 5-3 on the season. They take down Texas Tech 35-34, and I'll be honest, when they went down 31-14, about midway through the third quarter, I thought this game was over. Will Hammond came in after Bear Morton got hurt. He was making some plays. TCU defense was kind of on the ropes after actually playing a really solid first half. And I'll get to more about this in a minute, but my big takeaway from the first half of this game, and I guess deep into the third quarter as well, you talk about it. Granted, like they ended up finding a way to win, but the offense was just letting them down. We talked all week about how bad Tech was from a numbers perspective defensively. They rank bottom of the country in total defense. They rank bottom of the league in passing yards given up. Josh Hoover turned the ball over a few times. They had some empty possessions. They gave Tech good field position with those turnovers, and they found themselves down 24-14 at one point. Then it goes to 31-14, and things look pretty bleak. But to TCU's credit, they turned it around. They made some big plays. He found Jack Bech down the field to really break that drive open. They end up punching it in near the goal line there in the run game, and then a beautiful back shoulder throw to Eric McAllister for an 84-yard touchdown pass to take the lead with about 5 minutes left. And the defense did their job. I mean, they got some stops late in that game. They got a key stop on a 3rd and 7. Tech was in field goal range with about a minute and a half to go. It looked like they could just sort of get lined up in the middle of the field, kick it, and at least put pressure on TCU to go down and put another drive together to go win that football game. But instead, huge hit from Hakeem, defensive tackle, knocks that ball loose from Will Hammond. Marcus Deal jumps on it, and suddenly TCU gets the ball back. They get a first down with Savion Williams. Can't completely run the clock out because they can't get another first down. They punt the ball away. They get one more stop, and they win 35-34. So first off, I think similar to the Utah game, just great resolve shown here. And honestly, the way they've picked themselves up off the mat, it's still not perfect. And I'll get to some of the issues they had that have been a consistent theme throughout the season. 3 turnovers today that were killers, but they stuck with it. They found a way to fight through it, to get a victory. Defense and offense finally started playing some complementary football together, and they get the job done. Connor says he called a flip of UCF when we held them to the field goal. I just felt it. Yeah, that was a key moment. They held them to a field goal. At that point, it was 34-21. And not that it was like probable, but it did feel like, okay, you give yourself a chance. It's still a 2-possession game. If you can put a couple of good drives together and get some stops, then you're in this thing. And they were able to do that. Josh Hoover today, it was really a mixed bag. I mean, ultimately, you judge somebody based on what they do in winning moments. In the fourth quarter of this game, he was outstanding. Again, I talked about that back shoulder throw to Eric McAllister. But honestly, like this offense, the first drive of the game, they go right down the field, they score. Get Savion Williams involved again in that direct snap kind of wild frog formation that they like to run against Utah, and it was successful again. He had a 35-yard touchdown run to open the game. Finished with 72 yards, so kind of did plateau after that first big drive, but was still able to have some productive carries. And then later on in the game, still in the first quarter, a really good call by Kendall Briles. They line Savion up in the backfield next to Hoover, and instead of handing it off to him, they run a little wheel route with him out of the backfield, and it's just a busted coverage. He's wide open, and he takes it to the house. I think that was a 75-yard touchdown reception or 73, something like that from Josh Hoover. And so he had the one really good drive. You had the big play. And then after that, honestly, the offense kind of disappeared for 2.5 quarters because in the second quarter, you're up 14-3, you get the ball back, and you have bad field position, but it's one of those moments where it's like, okay, if you can put a good drive together here, even get 3 points, that really puts a lot of pressure on Tech to get going on the offensive side of the ball and start putting up, points on the board. Well, Hoover holds the ball for too long. He gets sacked. He fumbles. Now Tech has the ball inside the 5, and the defense makes a great stand. Tech runs a fake field goal, which looked like Johnny Hodges was the only one who kind of recognized it pre-snap, but he got outflanked by the wide receiver or, the blocking end on the outside. And so they walk it in for the touchdown, and suddenly it's 14-10, and then the wheels kind of started to fall off. Offensive line-wise, weird day. I mean, I think they were coming off their best performance against Utah and didn't follow it up with good results here. Had the strip sack, gave up 3 sacks. Tech coming into this game had 6 sacks on the season, so they get 50% of their season total in one ball game. And once again, just kind of week to week with who has a hot hand running the ball. Trent Battle, who was so good against Utah, struggled today, and they didn't really get any production from the traditional backs. I mean, Trent had 7 carries for 10 yards. Jeremy Payne, 3 carries for 17 yards. Cam Cook, 1 carry, did go for 19 yards. It was the Savion Williams show in the backfield running out of that Wildcat formation. Kev says J.P. Richardson needs to stop catching punts inside the 10. Yeah, that would help as well. Special teams, still a problem. That fake field goal, I mean, I get it was a call by Tech. And maybe you just have to tip your hat to them. It was a good moment to do that. They caught him by surprise. But at the same time, they like to go for it. Joey likes to go for it. They're down 14-3. That's a weird place for them to suddenly get conservative and say, oh, no, we're good just making it a 1-score game, kicking this through the uprights and cutting it to 8. I would expect that they would at least have some sort of field goal safe, or before they get out there, hey, fellas, we got to watch for the fake here. But again, it was bad recognition, honestly, because they executed it well, but the kicker got out there to the edge, and it was just 2 guys out there in Johnny Hodges, and I think that was Nana running from the other side, and he couldn't chase him down, and Johnny got blocked, and so ended up being a touchdown. So that was a bad moment. But going back to Josh Hoover, the 2 picks, I mean, just putting the ball in harm's way. The first one, I guess you can't completely blame him. It was an RPO, and it was sort of a fluky play. He threw it right into the stomach of an outside linebacker who I think read the play well and knew, all right, let me drop to this spot and just kind of get my hands up and see what happens, and it ends up falling in his lap. And so it's a turnover. The second one, and this has been pretty indicative of Josh in his career to this point. I mean, just trying to make a play. I get it. You're rolling right. You're hoping to hit somebody down the field. But on a dead sprint like that, throwing up the sideline to Jeremy Payne, who did have a step on his defender, but I mean, that it would have taken a good throw if he had his feet set and he was able to step up in the pocket and go through his normal progression. This is off schedule, off balance, trying to make a play. Well, he leaves it a little short. He gets tipped by the linebacker into the hands of waiting safety. And now all of a sudden you put yourself in a big hole because you're down 31-14 with 3 minutes left in the third quarter, I think, when they got the ball back. But Josh made some big-time throws when he had to. And again, in the absence of a running game, they found a way to be productive on offense in the second half, find those receivers. That was a big throw to DJ Rogers for that touchdown. I think cut it to 6. Or I guess that cut it to 13. That touchdown in the run game cut it to 6. And then that final throw to Eric McAllister. And, I mean, Sonny said this week when asked about Eric McAllister getting him more opportunities, he was like, well, we like him, but he's got a good receiver in front of him in Savion and then Jack Besh as well. And both those guys have been productive. That being said, that dude is really good with the ball in his hands. He's good at getting open. And that was a really smooth play today. He catches it back shoulder, immediately spins to the outside, gets the touchdown. And I think they just have to find a way to feed him the ball more. And Savion, I mean, you're getting him involved more outside of the traditional space that you would with a wide receiver lately with the stuff you're doing in the run game. So I think there's an opportunity to get Eric on the field more with that being the case. CB says the 34 points put up by Tech's offense won't indicate this, but TCU's defense has been playing good the past couple of games. Yeah, they have. I was impressed with them today. Now, you had a rough stretch there going into halftime and then into the second half where you're giving up some big plays. But by and large, I mean, the stat line won't tell you this. Taj Brooks ended up with, I think, 121 yards rushing in this ball game. Let me double-check that. But I thought they tackled well. I thought they came downhill and made plays and made life tough on him, which – that's really all you can ask to do against a guy that has been super successful in his career. And, they bowed up when they had to. I mean, when it was 34-21, they got a couple big stops to give the offense an opportunity to go down and score. Yeah, Taj ended up with 121 yards, but it was on 30 carries, 4 yards per carry, had the one touchdown. I thought they did well. I thought the pass defense had some tough moments, but I like what we've seen from Channing Canada lately. And I appreciate that Ian Davlos made that adjustment and said, hey, we're going to give this guy more snaps. Big Easy says, I guess we're stuck with Hoover for this year, but next season I would like to open up the QB room. Well, it seems like a good place to transition there. So we'll talk a little bit more about Josh and kind of where they're at with him. This is Locked On Horned Frogs. Your team every day. TCU gets a big 35-34 win over Texas Tech this afternoon. Well, thank you to our friends at LinkedIn, linkedin.com/LockedOnCollege. You can post your job for free there. You need to look for talented people on the LinkedIn site. That's where you find people in the job market. LinkedIn.com/LockedOnCollege. Post your job for free. 86% of small businesses find a qualified candidate within 24 hours. LinkedIn Jobs, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. So the Josh thing is fascinating. And it sort of dovetails with the Sonny Dykes conversation because you never know. I mean, there's 4 games left. I think there's a great chance they finish with 6 wins and make a bowl game. And I've said multiple times this year, I feel like if they do that, then Sonny will get another year because I believe the administration here wants him to succeed. They want to give him some time to figure this out. And they've selected Josh as their guy for the time being. I think this offseason quietly was a pivotal turning point in that you had the opportunity, if you wanted to go in the portal and find a new starting quarterback or at least find somebody that you would have been comfortable saying, this is a guy that could push him for the job. And if things aren't working out in camp or if things aren't working out early in the season, we could make that pivot, make that change, and it wouldn't be a huge drop-off. Instead, they went and got Ken Seals, which I like Ken Seals, but I said when he signed, I was like, I feel like this is sort of almost like a veteran backup in the NFL. It's bringing someone in with the intention of saying, hey, this is somebody who could help us if there's an injury. This is somebody who could just be good for us in the quarterback room. And then you got Haas Haney, the young guy. And you got Schobel coming in next year, but he'll be a true freshman. And I guess you have the potential of going in the portal, but the way they've kind of handled this last few seasons, I don't see that being a big priority. I think if they did, it would be kind of similar to what they did this year. So that would be a weird kind of quarterback battle. And I like Haas a lot. I can't really say I could make a judgment on him right now because they've been so limited when they've used him. The turnovers are a killer, though. And I think Josh knows that. I think he wants to be successful. Now, again, I feel like you have to weigh that by saying when the chips were down today, he found a way to make plays and do some special things that got them the win. And now suddenly they're 5-3. And honestly, after that Houston loss, I was more positive than some people. I thought they could find a way to scratch out 3 or 4 more games. I did not at all expect them to win their next 2 and suddenly put themselves in a pretty good situation. And quietly, I wouldn't say it means much in the big picture of the conference race. I saw Connor said earlier that Kansas almost gave the Frogs a gift today because K-State was on the ropes against KU, and K-State ended up pulling it out, though, with a last-minute field goal and then getting a stop on defense. But Baylor and TCU are sort of in similar places right now, and that the season started out. For TCU, it was up and down. For Baylor, it was really just all bad. And they made some changes. Both schools have. And suddenly they've won 2 in a row. Baylor's big change has been Sawyer Robertson has taken over at the quarterback position after DeQuan Finn got hurt, and he's run with it in a big way. But suddenly that game is sort of important in the Big 12 standings and just, I think, in the measuring stick aspect of, okay, where are these two teams at? Who's in a spot where they can kind of take charge here and maybe build into 2025? So it's a fascinating question that Big Easy poses, or I guess just this thought of next season is going to be a big year for TCU because if things don't fall apart here, you're going to have a lot of returning production coming back, and it feels like, okay, this is year 4 of a new coaching staff. You've got guys that have been in the program for a while now. Like, this would be the time that you should start seeing like some big strides and maybe an opportunity to go compete again for a conference title. So, I mean, we'll see what he does over the last 4 games. I think the question, though, because I see somebody else mention that, the turnovers are bad and he needs to be on the hot seat for it, talking about Josh Hoover, but like, who's going to step in and play? I mean, like, we don't know a lot about Haas Haney right now. We're going to know even less about Schobel when he gets here as a true freshman. So it's a tough situation to be in, but Josh has to clean up the turnover situation. That being said, I mean, his stat line, his final stat line was honestly pretty solid. I think he was 21 of 32, and 2 of those were picks. So if he can find a way to stop putting the ball in harm's way, then I think he's got a chance to be a really good QB for this team. And, I mean, same kind of goes for the team as a whole. I said last week, I was like, I think TCU, the question for TCU the rest of the year is, can they find a way to play within their limitations? Because there's things that they've just done week to week that are concerning and that don't win you football games, like turning the ball over, the penalties. And it's happened so much that you're like, okay, this seems to be a trend with this group. But if they could learn how to take care of the football, then this team gets a lot better because there's talent here and it feels like they're starting to make plays, starting to win, starting to figure out how to go about getting victories as the season goes on. CB said the only good loss this year is to SMU. Houston and UCF, there was a huge blown lead. Yeah, I've never been someone who likes to look back at a year and be like, man, if they could have just had their head on straight in these other 2 games, they would have been 10-2. Because, I mean, I think like sports just doesn't work that way. But if they end this year on a heater, I'm going to come away honestly kind of more annoyed that they lost those games, because the UCF thing was, I think they got a little complacent offensively, had some execution issues. Defense had some big trouble in the second half of that ball game. And, you take that loss. But then the next week against SMU, they just completely blow a tire. In the Houston game a couple weeks later, that just didn't make a lot of sense, even though Houston did go beat Utah today. So they're showing a little more life in year 1 under Willie Fritz. I mean, the Big 12 is crazy, man. It really is a week-to-week league. And I think, unfortunately, for the Big 12, it's more of a product of like just having a lot of good teams and not great teams. But it does make for just some wild results each and every week that are fun to watch and are fun to see. We'll take one last time out here. We'll come back, get some of Sonny Dykes quotes after the ball game. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. If you're waking up on Sunday morning getting ready for NFL Sunday, check out FanDuel.com or download the FanDuel app. FanDuel is where the game starts. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. One $5 bet gets you $200 in bonus bets. FanDuel, proud sponsor of the Locked On Network. Steven Johnson of the Fort Worth Star-Telegram was sending out some of Sonny Dykes' reactions after the victory against Tech today. He said the team is playing harder and building confidence from grinding out wins, but they must play better still. He wants to see a complete game from both the offense and the defense. Yeah, I mean, I would love to see that. I think everybody that's a Frog fan would desire to see this team firing on full cylinders. It hasn't really happened to this point. However, they've come away with two important wins in the span of this that have really saved the year. I mean, that was headed down a dark path when you dropped to 3-3 after that loss at home to the Cougars. And they've turned it around a big way. And kudos to them for doing that. I mean, I think that's been the biggest difference the past couple of weeks is even with the mistakes, they just look more – there's more fire there. And sometimes that can make up for some of the issues that you have executing as an offense and a defense. He also said he thought the TCU defense did a really good job defensively, hanging in there and keeping them in the game. And, yeah, CB mentioned that earlier. They did do a great job hanging tough. It's difficult when your offense is having issues, and especially I think when that's supposed to be the strength of your team and they're struggling to get their footing and find a rhythm. But to their credit, I mean, they did an outstanding job getting some stops. If they could have found a way to slow down that fake field goal, that would have been a massive stop on 4th and goal of 14-3, and maybe the game was not as perilous as it was with Tech going on that crazy run after that. But outstanding job, even with Will Hammond in there as backup quarterback, even though I thought he equipped himself well and looked really good, looked the part coming in there and making plays. And the defense was able to just stick their nose in there and get some stops. And finally the offense got going, and then they were able to flip the script late in the ball game and get a victory. That was a huge turnover, man. That was a great hit on Will Hammond. Yeah, there was a face mask by Johnny Hodges before that, but just, I mean, met him right at the he turns around and he comes right there and just puts his nose on the ball and jars it loose. And then super heads that played by Marcus Deal, because that ball was like in the middle of a pile kind of, and he just reached over and grabbed it and was able to hold on to it. And Salem gets first down in the run game. So they've this coaching staff has found some good things after what we hope was a wake-up call. Still a team with issues, still a team that has to kind of fight, scratch, and claw to get victories and can't always get out of their own way. But they found a good recipe for success, and they found some wrinkles to this offense that have opened up things a little bit more and given them an opportunity to compete at a high level. So that's all super positive. Baylor next week on the road, Oklahoma State and Arizona at home, and then close the season with a road game against Cincinnati. And that's it. And it's still, 9-3 still on the table, right? 8-4 certainly there. We'll see how it finishes. But I think, again, just a great response in this game to adversity, but also the season as a whole, finding a way when everybody was kind of selling their stock on TCU football to gut out a couple wins. Wasn't perfect, wasn't the cleanest football in the world, but they found ways to get it done. And that's all that matters. We just want dubs here on Locked On Horned Frogs. We'll talk more about this all through the week. It's Locked On Horned Frogs, your team every day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast.